Okay, so we're gonna do a frog. Now, frogs, I just did this gesture real quick, and with frogs, after looking through it, it's like I'm trying to find a shape that we can associate with frogs, and I think Madeleines, the cookie. Madeleines sort of look like this. So they kind of have this flat top. And then if we draw down the side, we can come in here like that, but they're relatively flat. And you can see them sort of coming here. So we get this side. I know it's crazy, but frogs are Madeleines. This is going to be a little wider. Right in here. Okay. And then on top of that, so like if we have, that Madeleine cookie from another view, Madeleines sort of look like this. At least the ones that I remember. Madeleines have this sort of shape to them. Okay. And so they're kind of flatter than other butter cookies. Other butter cookies are, they're round, or they have that sort of weird design in them and that kind of stuff. Madeleines are like flat. And so they have this sort of, they have the front edge to them that's kind of flat. And then they move around like that. So those are Madeleines. Okay, so let's put that Madeleine on. So we have this big cookie shape that's going to go around our frog. So frogs have, their shoulder blades are really narrow. So there's not much to them. So it kind of looks like an I-beam or something. And then we'll be able to get into the skeleton, which is going to come in here like this. And their body looks a lot different than the skeleton. But the best way to think about it, or a good way to think about it, is because there's not much change from, like, we can't really see a neck. We can see a little indentation, but like the thickness of the frog's head is the same width as the shoulders. Okay, so then if we can just add in that frog's head, and frogs have really, you can see their zygomatica way back, and then we have this sort of wedge shape that's going to come in here. One thing cool about frogs is right as you find that top edge shape, that's where the nostril is going to be. And so now we can just make this come back, and you'll see a little frog with a little bit of a chin. A lot of times it gets stuck back behind here in their head. And they have huge eyes. At least tree frogs do. Most frogs do. They're watching you. And so now we come out and we'll have a little bit of a rim around the eye. But anyway, so that's going to be our frog head shape. And then we have this Madeleine that's going to be sitting here on its body. And so then if you think of that, then we can also think of the acorn. So it's like a Madeleine acorn. And so we'll be able to see the top of it, but then it has like this collar, which sort of looks like an acorn, or I guess it's a bullet shape or something. And so this little collar is that separation between the scapula and the head. And that's usually kind of baggy. It's full of air or water. Okay. So then we can come off the head, and that's where we're going to see a little bit of indentation. The other thing that we're going to have to put into our Madeleine frog, if we just think of that rounded shape right here, the pelvis of the frog is huge. It has this giant pelvis. So like what's rib cage, where its rib cage is, it's like right here. And if you're looking at, if you look at most skeletal specimens of tree frogs and stuff, they're rib cage doesn't really hold up to the skeletonization process, or being able to see the skeleton. And so they're just like little pegs that sit on the spinal column. They do have ribs, and they're very kind of stringy looking, if you will. But because there's so much of a pelvis, these things are just built to jump, so they have these big giant pelvises. And the pelvis itself, I'll just hide this for a sec. The pelvis on a frog looks like this big shield kind of shape. It comes out, so the spine goes all the way down, and then there's these, you'll see the ilium. And it's going to come in here like that. So if this is near us, you'll see the spine moving here like this, and then we'll see, so it makes this sort of heart shape. At least some frogs do. Makes that little heart shape that's going to be in there. And then they have, there's a little bit of a bulging that's going on there, but then what's going on is down at the edge of the pelvis, that's where you're going to see the leg. So let's just make this leg go up for the time being, and it can come down. So you can see this leg that's over here. So we're going to see this little shape. And I haven't decided what kind of shape that is, but it definitely looks like a heart to me. So next Valentine's Day, you can think of frog pelvises. And then we're going to come up and have it's relatively short distance for that rib cage, and then we're going to be able to see that rib cage, which is going to come out here like this. I mean, sorry, the scapula. Rib cage is going to be in here. And then we get into the head, which is right through here. So then you can see the whole frog is, from the head, you might see its jawbones kind of peeking out, but then it's the profile of it is it's pretty much the same, okay, from this down view. So then if we come back to our frog guy, our friend the frog, what else do I have? I think I'm missing some. Okay, so let's get that gesture back. But if we continue with this, and we can say we're going to have that shape, that like this top part shape, and then as this rolls back off our Madeleine, you can actually see the pelvis push up and away. So we're going to see this change of direction there, and then it goes very straight. So this is semi-round, it's sort of round, and then there's the throat, I guess, the collar, and then we're going to get back into our Madeleine, which is going to be in through here. Okay, and we have this huge pelvis, and that pelvis is going to come around. Now we can start to add in the appendages, the limbs. Okay, and so more often than not, you're going to see fleshy material cover that limb. But just to get it in there, because you want to draw very active, athletic frogs, we'll just draw a little bit of a curve here, and then follow that gesture, and then we can get into that cylinder. And I'm just attaching it here. This is the scapula, so we're seeing this shape. So it's going to be very similar to other animals. We still want to be able to connect and really show that shoulder that's in there. So now we can bring out the cylinder, and then we're going to see the other side. Now frogs, especially tree frogs, have these really big wrists. They're like the Popeye of the amphibian world. And so now we can bring these huge wrists down. They have these great big cylinder wrists. And then we can get into its little paw, or its hand, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And as it comes around, there's these huge pads that live on its digits. Okay, and those guys are going to come around here like this. And you'll be able to, with a little bit of practice, you'll be able to get those hands in there. But really big forearms. Okay, it's like they work out. They only go to leg day and forearm day. Okay, so similarly on this side, we may not see that arm peeking out, maybe just a little bit of that elbow, but now we can get into that big forearm. This is going to come around. And then we can get into its foot. So keep in mind that cylinder that's going to be in there. Now, as this goes down, as the pelvis, we follow down the ilium, and we draw down, then we're going to be able to see its hind leg. And its hind leg is going to come in here, and it's going to be folded. In this view, it's going to be folded up back behind the forelegs, or the near legs, the front legs. Okay, and so then we're going to see that fold that's going to happen in there, and then from there we have that cylinder that's going to cross over, big and relatively thick appendages, and I'll come back in here and erase out some of that stuff. But now we can come down into the foot, and then what's happening with the foot, this big appendage here, we're going to see a little bit of a gap at the foot, and then we get into the toes. Okay, so we're going to see a little bit of a collar shape or something that's going to happen in here. We can get those guys in there, so now we can see that shape. But the thing that's really going to sell this is this extra part. So if we declare that's the rib cage, it's like this is going to peek out, so it's almost like a hatch or something, if you will. That's peeking out over here, and that's where the pelvis is going to be. So now it looks like a, I don't know, like a Jetsons car or something like that. But then here are going to be the limbs, okay, and then you can get into the head, which is going to be over there. But those are the suggestions on there, and then when we, well, let's change what that foot is doing. It should be up and doing that kind of stuff, maybe bending the toes and stuff. But the other leg is still going to come up. You can drop it down a little tiny bit, but we can still see that other leg that's going to be in there, and so forth. So then if it was up on a tree, or if it was on a hot dog or something like that, then you'd be able to see it moving through. So again, stuff that goes into a frog other than flies is on gesture first, obviously, but then like think of this Madeleine shape. If you don't know what Madeleines are, you're going to have to find somebody who makes butter cookies. And so now we can see that top there, and then that's going to move around, and then add a little bit of a collar or a bubble or extra shape in here. It's going to be the same width as the head, and then you can get into the head. Okay, so legs are going to be down at the end, and it's going to be seating right at that collar part. So then we can see that. Whoops, we can see that leg is going to come out over here. Okay, so that's what's going on with that. And then don't forget, is that comes out very high pelvis. That's going to be in there. So then we can get started. And so we have this sort of above view. It's almost the same view as what we drew. And then head is here. You'll be able to see the eye, leg. Heck, if he's in a hurry, you can even drop that leg down, and maybe we're going to come up, and he's like, oh man, I gotta jump away or something. Okay, so that's suggestions here. So enjoy drawing cookies, because frogs are Madeleines.